Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you. Usually when I'm prepping for these deep dives, I'm looking at things that feel, well, they feel solid.
Yeah.
We're looking at quarterly earnings reports or a new study on neuroplasticity or maybe the history of the supply chain.
Right. Things you can touch.
Things I can touch.
Yeah.
Things I can verify with a Google search.
Concrete, tangible.
Exactly. Concrete. But the stack of documents you sent over for this week, I opened the first file, I read the executive summary, and I actually had to put my coffee down and just walk around the room for a minute.
It tends to have that effect on people. It's a bit of a system shock, let's say.
It's disturbing.
Yeah.
But not in a horror movie kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
It's disturbing because it claims to be an instruction manual, not a philosophy book, not a religious text. An instruction manual for everything, for existence, for the machinery of reality itself.
Right. And that distinction is absolutely crucial. The source material we're covering today, it calls itself the C4 doctrine, or sometimes you'll see it referred to as the curriculum.
The curriculum.
Yeah.
Even that is unsettling.
It is. And unlike most of the things we cover, it isn't trying to sell you a product, and it is definitely not trying to convert you to a political ideology. It's simply claiming to, explain the schematic of the universe.
And that's the hook that got me. I mean, that's what really pulled me in. We're so used to hearing about the universe as this, spiritual mystery, something vague and poetic, or, on the other hand, this cold, random accident of physics where nothing matters.
Two extremes, yeah.
Right. But this text just comes in and says, no, stop guessing. It's a machine. Here is the blueprint. Here is how it runs.
And it's a machine with a very, very specific output. It's not just running for the sake of running. It has a purpose.
So before we get into the aliens and the dimensions and what looks like an org chart of the galaxy, which we will get to, I promise you, I want to start with the concept that opens the whole dossier.
Okay.
It's the phrase that frames everything else we're going to talk about. The text says, calling the architects gods is a user interface simplification.
It's a brilliant way to start, isn't it? I mean, just as a piece of writing, it immediately bridges that gap between, theology and technology.
It completely reframes it.
It just sucks all the mysticism out of the room and replaces it with computer science.
Well, let's really unpack that for the listener who might be, driving right now and wondering what on earth we're talking about. User interface simplification. What are we actually saying there?
Okay, so think about your laptop.
Yeah.
Or your smartphone, even better. When you want to delete a file, what do?
I drag it to the little trash can icon.
Right, the trash can. Now ask yourself, is there actually a tiny physical trash can inside your computer? Is there a little plastic bin where the data goes to rot?
No, of course not. That's absurd.
Of course not. What's actually happening is a mind-bogglingly complex series of voltage changes on a silicon wafer. Thousands, maybe millions of lines of code are executing just to mark those memory sectors as overwritable.
Right. The file isn't even a single thing.
Exactly. It's not a thing at all. It's a scattered set of magnetic or electrical states across a hard drive. But our brains, our, primate brains, we didn't evolve to understand binary code or silicon voltage.
We evolved to understand rocks and berries and, tools. Things you can throw.
Precisely. So the trash can icon is a lie, but it's a necessary lie. It's a useful lie.
It's a simplification that allows me to operate this incredibly complex machine without needing a degree in computer engineering.
You got it.
Yeah.
The C4 doctrine argues that the word God is the exact same thing. It is a desktop icon for a process that is far too complex for our current operating system to handle.
That is.
Yeah.
That's a wild thought. So when we look up at the sky and see something that feels infinite, or we experience a moment of synchronicity that feels all-powerful, and we instinctively label it God. The text is saying that's just you clicking the icon because you don't have the permissions or the processing power to see the underlying code.
Precisely. The text is very clear that our nervous systems are, to be blunt, primitive. We're running an old OS. If we were to perceive the actual raw data of a higher dimensional being, the pure math, the geometry, the energy expenditure, our brains would crash.
You would be the biological equivalent of the blue screen of death.
That's the perfect analogy. So to keep us functional, to keep us from, going insane, our consciousness slaps a familiar label on it, calls it deity or angel or spirit, and then we can move on with our day.
So today our mission on this deep dive is to try and look behind that icon. We're going to try to ignore the user interface and actually read a little bit of the code.
Or at least the comments in the code.
Yeah, exactly. The Cliff's Notes. We're going to look at what this machine actually is, who built it, and this is the scariest part for me, what we're actually supposed to be doing inside of it.
And I'll warn you, and the listeners, now, the answer isn't be happy. It's a lot more demanding than that.
No, it really isn't. Okay, so let's start with the hardware, the big picture. The text asks us to visualize the galaxy. And it specifically points to the images we're getting now from things like the James Webb Telescope.
Which are just stunning, breathtaking images.
They are. I look at them and I see this beautiful swirling cloud of stars. I see nebulae. It looks random. It's gorgeous, but it feels chaotic. Like someone splattered paint on a black canvas.
And that's the standard model of physics, right? That's what we're taught. The Big Bang happened, stuff flew out in all directions, and now we're just drifting. We're on a rock in a random corner of space.
Yeah, cosmic dust.
The C4 doctrine says, look closer. You are missing the function for the form. It's not a painting. It's an engine.
It calls the galaxy a centrifuge.
The centrifuge.
Now, I know what a centrifuge is in a lab. I remember from high school chemistry. You put a vial of, say, blood in a machine, you spin it incredibly fast, and it separates the components.
By density.
By density. The heavy stuff like red blood cells goes to the bottom, the lighter plasma goes to the top.
Exactly. It's a filtration system, a separation engine. The text argues that the Milky Way isn't a random cloud of gas and stars, it's a purpose-built turbine. The rotation isn't an accident, it's the core function.
It's spinning for one reason.
To separate signal, which they define as ordered consciousness, from noise, which they define as entropy and chaos.
Okay, signal and noise. We really need to drill down on those definitions because they use those words very differently than I do when I'm trying to tune a radio.
It's a different context for sure. In this framework, signal is order. It's structure, it's coherence, it's high-frequency data, it's intent, it's information.
Okay.
Noise is entropy, it's chaos. It's the natural tendency of all systems to decay and fall apart. The text posits that the fundamental purpose of the universe is to act as a giant filter for these two opposing forces.
So the whole universe, our entire galaxy, is basically a giant refining plant.
Or a distillery, yeah. It's taking this raw, chaotic potential, the noise, and spinning it, processing it, until the pure signal separates from the waste product.
Okay, that's a huge concept to wrap my head around. So if the galaxy is the factory floor, and this great cosmic centrifuge is the machine, where are we in this picture? Where does a little planet like Earth fit in?
Earth is the processing tray. Or, as the text much prefers to call it, the classroom.
The classroom. But when I hear that, I'm not picturing a nice open-air Montessori school with, finger painting and nap time.
No, definitely not. Think more of a high-pressure laboratory. A classroom with the doors locked and a very difficult test on the blackboard.
The documents mention something called the Kessler cage and also the Oort cloud containment.
Right.
Now, I've heard of the Oort cloud in, standard astrophysics. It's that theoretical shell of icy comets and debris way, way out past Pluto, right? The edge of the solar system.
That's the accepted scientific definition, yes. A shell of primordial junk. But this doctrine recontextualizes it. It describes it not as junk, but as a functional barrier. A containment field. A Faraday cage.
A cage. So we're fenced in.
In a sense, it creates a closed system.
Why? What's the point of locking us in?
Thermodynamics. Basic physics. Think about a pressure cooker. If you want to cook something quickly, or, more importantly, if you want to change the state of matter like turning water into high-pressure steam to drive an engine, you need a sealed container.
Because if the system is open, the energy just dissipates. It leaks out.
Yeah.
You can't build pressure in an open jar.
You can't. So, to apply that metaphor, we are sealed in to build spiritual pressure, to accelerate a process.
So we are sealed into this classroom to solve a physics problem.
And this is the part that, if you really let it sink in, it just changes your entire worldview. The text says the purpose of Earth is not to be a paradise. It's not a vacation resort where you're supposed to sip métis and be happy all the time.
No.
It's a stress test.
That explains so much about everything. The daily grind, the traffic, the arguments, the knee pain, the taxes. If you operate under the assumption that life is supposed to be happy, all of that stuff feels like a mistake.
Right. It feels like the universe is broken or you're being punished.
You think, why is this happening to me? You feel victimized by the difficulty. But if you shift the frame, if you view it as a classroom, or maybe a gym,
then the difficulty is the curriculum.
the resistance is the point.
Exactly. You don't walk into a gym and complain that the weights are heavy. That's why you're there. If the weights weren't heavy, you wouldn't get any stronger. Earth is a heavy gravity environment for consciousness.
I want to touch on this other visual they use because it's really stuck with me since I read it. The idea of the uniform.
Yes, you are the student, your body is the uniform, your life is the semester.
It's such a detached, almost clinical way to look at being human.
Hmm.
We spend our entire lives obsessed with the uniform, don't we?
Completely.
We iron it, we wash it, we try to keep it from getting stained. We get plastic surgery to patch it up when it gets old. We identify with it so deeply. I look in the mirror and I think, this face, this body, this is me.
But the text says that's the first and most fundamental mistake. That's the core of the illusion. The uniform is and always was property of the school.
And you have to hand it back at the end of the semester.
You have to hand it back. That's what death is.
The death is just turning in your uniform.
The uniform decomposes. It goes back to the earth. The only
Yeah.
thing you get to keep is the grade you earned. It's what you learned while you were wearing it, the changes you managed to make to your internal state.
Which brings us to the students, us. The documents lay out this whole taxonomy of being. It's basically a corporate org chart for the entire galaxy, and it is just, it's fascinating. It's broken into 3 levels, Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3.
And I think we all have a pretty good guess where we start on that ladder.
We are Class 1, labeled the substrate.
The substrate. It doesn't sound very glamorous, does it? Not exactly a confidence booster?
No, it sounds like dirt. It sounds like the gravel you put at the bottom of a fish tank.
Well, you're not far off. The visual prompt they give for Class 1 is a figure struggling in the mud. It's dark, it's raining. The key phrase is high friction.
High friction. That is the most perfect 2-word description of a bad Tuesday I have ever heard.
Isn't it? Class I is characterized by biological intelligence. We are described functionally as antennas.
Antennas. As in receiving a signal.
Receiving, yes, but also generating. Our primary function, the whole reason we are down here in the mud in this high-friction environment, is to generate new data. And we do that through the mechanism of free will.
Generate data. That sounds very
But,
matrixy.
right.
Are we just biological batteries for some cosmic machine?
It's a little different. Batteries just store and discharge energy.
First,
We create complexity. We generate information. Think about it this way. If you live in a perfect world, a utopia where there is no conflict, no struggle, no hard choices, what happens?
you don't think you just exist.
Nothing new ever happens. It's a static loop. It's a screensaver. Beautiful, maybe, but unchanging.
There's no growth.
There's no new information being created, but down here, in the mud, you have to choose every single day between lying and telling the truth. You have to choose between selfishness and sacrifice. You have to choose between giving up and pushing forward one more time.
And each of those choices,
Every time you make one of those choices, especially against the resistance of your own fear or laziness, you generate a unique data point, a spark of order in the chaos. You create something that did not exist in the universe before that moment.
so the messiness of human life,
Mm.
the drama, the heartbreak, the struggle,
Mm.
that's actually the product. We're not supposed to eliminate it.
That's the raw material. We are the research and development department of the universe. We're the ones in the trenches, running the experiments, figuring out how to maintain order when everything is naturally trying to decay into chaos.
And the text says most of us are asleep.
Yes, asleep at the wheel. It means we are drifting through the mud, just reacting to things instead of consciously acting. We let the environment dictate our internal state.
Like, if the weather is bad, we feel grumpy. If someone is rude to us in traffic, we get angry and are rude back.
Exactly. That is sleeping. The signal is just being drowned out by the noise of the uniform in the environment. Waking up, in this context, is asserting your own signal regardless of the external noise. It's choosing to be calm in the middle of a storm.
Okay, so that's us. Class 1. Struggling in the mud, generating data, mostly asleep, trying to keep our little internal lights on.
That's the starting point.
Now, this is where the text takes a very sharp left turn into what feels at first like classic science fiction. We move up the ladder to Class 2.
The hybrids.
This section,
Yeah.
it honestly gave you the creeps. We've all seen the movies about advanced alien civilizations, you know, the gray aliens, the flying saucers. Usually they're presented as the superior one.
All right, they're the goal. They have the lasers. They have the warp drives. They're smarter than us.
But this doctrine calls them something else entirely. It calls them the trap.
The trap, or a dead end. It frames them as a profound cautionary tale.
Can you describe the visual for Class 2? Because it's very specific.
It is. So you're meant to imagine a sleek, chrome, perfectly silent saucer, incredibly advanced technology. They've clearly solved things like anti-gravity, limitless energy. But then you look inside.
Yeah.
Inside the cockpit, there isn't a distinct being walking around. There is a frail, atrophied, gray biological entity that is physically and permanently wired into the console. There are tubes, wires, neural links. The being and the ship are one unit.
So it's a cyborg,
Yeah.
but not in a cool action hero way.
No, not at all. It's a dependency. The source uses this absolutely devastating line to describe them. These entities solved gravity but failed love.
Solved gravity but failed love.
Wow.
That implies that technological evolution and, I guess, spiritual evolution are two completely different axes on a graph.
Two different tech trees.
Yeah, and you can max out one while having a 0 score in the other.
Exactly. And according to this doctrine, if you go all in on the external material tech tree but neglect the internal spiritual one, you eventually hit a hard bottleneck.
You can manipulate matter, you can travel the stars, but you never figure out how to stabilize your own consciousness.
You never densify your signal. The internal light remains weak, flickering, and incoherent.
So their soul, for lack of a better word, is still weak, even after 1,000,000 years of technological progress.
It's so weak that it literally cannot survive without a container. If that great alien were to be unplugged and step out of its ship into the vacuum of space, it would die. And not just biologically, its consciousness itself would dissipate. Poof, gone.
Why?
Because it lacks the internal structure, the coherence, to hold itself together without a physical or technological shell.
So they merge with the machine to survive death.
They build a perfect, immortal shell because they are terrified of what comes next. The text is very clear. They are hiding inside the metal because they lack the inner fire to face the universe on their own terms.
That completely flips the script on the whole scary alien invader trope. It makes them sound, I don't know, pathetic.
Or just tragic. They are described in the text with a single word, traffic?
Traffic, what does that mean?
They are just moving around, they're going places, they travel the galaxy from one star system to another. They're immortal, sure. They can live for 1,000,000 years inside that perfect ship, but they are stuck.
They can't graduate.
They can't move to the next level. They can't ascend to the next dimension. They are trapped in a perfect, immortal car on a cosmic highway that never, ever ends.
That is a very special kind of hell. Eternal stagnation.
It is. They chose safety over growth. They chose the machine over the spirit. And in this particular curriculum, that is the ultimate failing grade.
Which brings us to the goal, the top of the ladder. If Class 1 is the mud and Class 2 is the metal trap,
Yeah.
what is Class 3? Who are the architects?
Class 3 is graduation. It's the destination. And the visual here changes completely. There's no more mud. There's no more metal. We are looking at pure, coherent geometry. Tetrahedrons, spheres of pulsing light, complex fractal patterns.
So no bodies, no uniforms, and no ships.
They have shed all the hardware, both biological and technological. They exist as pure coherence, as stable, self-sustaining patterns of information and energy.
Wait, so they don't need the uniform anymore?
They don't need the uniform because the student has become strong enough, dense enough to exist without it. They are the signal that finally became solid on its own.
The text calls them the road crew, which is such a surprisingly blue-collar, down-to-earth term for these beings of pure light.
It is, isn't it? But it fits the machine analogy perfectly. If the galaxy is this giant centrifuge in school, well, someone has to keep the lights on. Someone has to make sure gravity keeps working according to spec. Someone has to maintain that Kessler cage around developing classrooms like ours.
So they are the maintenance workers of reality, the system administrators.
They are the infrastructure. They maintain the fundamental laws of physics so that we, the Class I entities, have a stable and predictable environment to learn and grow in.
And this loops us right back to that user interface question from the beginning. Because if I see a being of pure light that controls gravity and, in a sense, watches over my world, my brain is going to scream, God, there's no other word for it in my vocabulary.
And the text essentially says, sure, go ahead. If that icon helps you interface with the concept, fine.
But it's technically an error.
It's a semantic error because of the origin distinction. This is key. In most human theologies, God is uncreated. God exists outside of and before the system. But a Class 3 architect is a graduate of the system.
Meaning?
Oh.
Meaning they used to be us.
Exactly. Billions of years ago, by our measure of time, they were in the mud, they were struggling, they were a Class I species somewhere else in the galaxy. They took the test, they did the work, they passed, and they moved up.
That changes the dynamic completely. It's not creator and creature. It's senior and freshman.
That's the perfect analogy. The text even uses it. And the conclusion is, do not worship the seniors just because you are freshmen.
Right. I mean, you would respect the seniors. You might ask them for directions to the cafeteria or what professor to avoid, but you don't fall to your knees and build a religion around them.
And most importantly, you realize that their very existence is proof that you can graduate too. They are the proof of concept. They show that the curriculum is possible to complete.
There's an analogy in the notes about a stick figure that really helps explain why we get this so wrong, why we make that category error. Can you walk us through the flatland concept?
Right. This is critical for understanding the dimensional limitations that cause this confusion. So imagine a 2D stick figure. He's drawn on a perfectly flat sheet of paper. His entire universe is length and width. He has no concept of up or down.
Okay, so he lives in flatland, a 2D world.
His physics, his reality is entirely 2D. Now imagine you, a 3D human, are holding a 3D object like a cube, and you hover it above his paper world.
You can't see it. It doesn't exist in his dimension.
Correct. But now, what happens if you slowly lower that cube and touch its corner to the paper? What does a stick figure perceive?
He just sees a point, a dot, appear out of thin air.
And as you push the cube further through the paper,
The dot becomes a line, then a triangle, then a bigger shape, a square, and then it shrinks and vanishes again. From his perspective, an object just materialized, broke all the laws of his physics, changed shape impossibly, and then dematerialized.
to him, that is magic, a miracle. He would call the cube a god.
But to you, standing in the third dimension, it's just a cube. It's simple geometry.
It's just geometry with one more dimension than he has access to. The C4 doctrine argues that Class 3 entities aren't magical or supernatural. They are just operating with more spatial and temporal coordinates than we currently are. What looks like a miracle to us is just their normal mode of operation.
And that's where that quote from the text comes in. God is a compression artifact.
That's the one.
It's the word our 3D brain uses when it runs out of math to describe a 4D or 5D event.
A placeholder for a concept that cannot yet render.
Okay, so we know the players on the field. We've got the freshmen struggling in the mud. We've got the eternal dropouts in their metal ships, the cyborgs. And we have the seniors maintaining the school grounds, the architects. But we need to talk about the actual mechanism. How does a freshman actually become a senior? The text calls this the mechanics of the soul, and it gets into some really specific, almost engineering-level details about what a soul actually is.
Yes, and this is where we have to completely jettison the idea of the soul as some kind of, a ghost in the machine.
Section 2, hardware versus signal.
Right. Most people in most cultures think something like this. I have a soul and it is located inside my body, like a pearl inside an oyster or a pilot in a cockpit.
Sure, that's the standard model. My spirit is in here somewhere behind my eyes.
The C4 doctrine says, no, that is incorrect. You are a signal being broadcast to a body. The direction is the other way around.
So the body is an antenna, a receiver.
The biological receiver, a terminal. The best modern analogy is cloud computing. Your computer, the physical hardware, the laptop sits on your desk. But your files, your data, your actual work, your consciousness, in this metaphor, is stored on a remote cloud server.
And when I turn the computer on, I'm just logging in. I'm downloading the stream from the server.
Exactly. Your brain isn't the source of your consciousness. It's the processor that interprets the signal and allows it to interact with this 3D environment. It's the modem and the graphics card.
Okay, so follow that analogy through. What happens if the computer gets, smashed with a hammer?
The hardware is broken, the screen is cracked, the keyboard is ruined. But the file on the Google Drive server is completely untouched. It's fine. You just need to get a new computer and log back in.
That's actually really comforting in a strange technological way. But it begs the huge question, why? Why do this at all? If we are these pure signals, safe and sound on the server, why would we broadcast ourselves into the mud? Why come down here to deal with taxes and heartbreak and knee pain?
One word. Densification.
Densification. That sounds like something you do to concrete mix.
It's not that far off, actually. The text calls this process the chisel. Imagine the signal in its original state on the server is very pure, but it's also very faint. It's weak. It's like a radio wave that's mostly static. It has no real structural integrity. It's wispy.
It's flimsy. It's not substantial.
Exactly. To make that signal strong, to make it coherent and self-sustaining, it needs to be put under pressure. It needs resistance. It needs to be tested.
And that's where the high-friction classroom of Earth comes in.
That's where the chisel comes in. The text uses the image of a sculptor striking a block of marble. Every single time a human being chooses love over fear, or discipline over laziness, or courage over cowardice, that choice is a strike of the chisel. It creates a spark. It forges new information.
So the struggle is literally the point.
The struggle is the point. You are here to densify your signal. You are here to make your consciousness so structured, so ordered, so solid, that it can eventually maintain its own form without needing the biological hardware to contain it.
Okay, can you give me a really concrete, everyday example? How do I densify the signal on my way to work?
Sure. Let's use the traffic example again. Someone cuts you off. Your biological uniform, the monkey brain, the fight or flight system, wants to scream. It floods you with adrenaline. It wants to lean on the horn and tailgate them. That is entropy. That's the noise. That is the path of least resistance.
Right, reacting, being asleep.
But then you, the actual signal, the student, intervene. You notice the anger rising. You take a conscious breath. You override the initial biological command. You say, it's not worth it. I'm not going to let this ruin my state. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital.
That takes a lot of effort sometimes.
That effort is the densification. And in that moment, you imposed order on chaos. You chose a higher frequency over a lower one. You just tightened the weave of your own soul. You made the signal stronger and clearer than the interference from the hardware.
And if you don't, if you just lose it and scream and honk,
then the signal was weak. The noise won that round. You didn't gain any density from that experience. You just reinforced the static.
So if the signal is too weak, if you live your whole life just reacting.
If the signal remains incoherent, then at the point of hardware failure death, it just dissipates. It can't hold its own shape in the vacuum. It needs the container, the body, to have any kind of existence. The entire goal of the curriculum is to build a signal so strong and stable that it becomes its own container.
This really puts a new spin on that old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's more like what challenges you gives you the opportunity to become real.
Precisely. You are earning your substance. You are forging your existence through the choices you make inside the simulation.
Now, speaking of choices, the documents say that we, as a species, seem to be at a pretty monumental one right now. We talked to Class 2, the machine hybrids, and the text suggests that humanity is standing right at a fork in the road.
This is Section 3, and it is, I think, incredibly relevant to our current technological landscape. We are at the crossroads between what it calls the tech trap and metric engineering of the spirit.
Two very different paths. Let's look at Path A first, the tech trap. This is the path that leads to becoming a Class 2 entity.
This is the path of transhumanism, at least as it's defined by this specific doctrine. It's the impulse to merge with our own technology. Chips in the brain, artificial organs, neural links.
Which on paper sounds pretty cool. I mean, who doesn't want to download kung fu directly into their brain or have a body that never gets old?
But you have to look at the core motivation. Why do people or entire species choose this path? The text says it boils down to one thing: fear of death.
They are afraid the signal will fade when the body dies, so they try to reinforce the hardware to make it last forever.
Exactly. They are trying to build an indestructible computer because they don't trust the cloud. They don't believe their consciousness can survive without the silicon and the metal.
And the result is a kind of immortality, yes, but it's a stagnant immortality.
You become a slave to the machine you built. You are limited by the very hardware you've merged with. You can never become pure light because you've anchored your signal to heavy matter. You've bolted yourself to the floor of the classroom forever.
Wow. Okay, now contrast that with Path B, metric engineering of the spirit.
Which is a very technical sounding phrase for something we might call ascension.
Ascension, enlightenment, graduation. This path involves dissolving the body, letting the hardware fail naturally when its time is up, but having a consciousness that remains perfectly intact.
This is where you get the starlight point visual for Class 3.
Yes. The result here is that you join the infinite. You become a peer of the architects. But the sole requirement is high coherence, high signal density. You can't buy your way in with technology. You have to build your way in with your own internal frequency.
It's the difference between buying a fancy fake diploma online and actually going to class, studying for years, and earning the degree.
That's a perfect analogy. Class 2 bought a fake diploma. They look like they graduated. They're immortal. They travel the stars, but they're trapped. They didn't actually do the work. Class 3 did the work.
And that work is internal, and for the most part, it's completely invisible to others.
We have another listener question here that fits in perfectly. It goes back to the architects, to Class 3. If they really are just the road crew or the electricians maintaining the school, does praying to them actually do anything?
Ah, yes, this is a fun one. The text calls this the utility grid explanation.
So the listener's basically asking, if they're just maintaining the physics, why do billions of people pray? Are we all just, talking to the wall?
The C4 doctrine's view here is that Class 3 entities operate on the principle of resonance, not worship.
Resonance,
Ah.
like a tuning fork.
Exactly like a tuning fork. The text says, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, praying to a Class 3 entity is like praying to an electrician. It is fundamentally inefficient.
I love that. Oh, great and powerful electrician, please grant me the miracle of a winning lottery ticket.
And the electrician is just looking at you, completely baffled, saying, buddy, I'm just here to fix the fuse box. I don't care if you love me. I care if your home's wiring is up to code. If it's not, you're a fire hazard.
So they don't want us to tell them how great they are. They don't want adoration.
No, they want coherence. They want your internal frequency to match the stable frequency of the grid they maintain. If you are operating out of chaos, fear, and hatred, you are introducing noise and static into the system. No amount of flattery or praise directed at them is going to fix your bad wiring.
But if you are loving, disciplined, and calm,
Then you are resonant. Your signal is compatible with the network. You are in harmony with the physics of the system.
so a prayer shouldn't be, please give me this thing. It should be an act of, I am making myself clear and coherent.
Exactly. It's a statement of intent to tune yourself, not a request for an external favor.
But do they help at all? Or are they completely hands-off, just watching from a distance?
The text admits they do act as guardians. But there is a very important caveat. They might, nudge the steering wheel of a car an inch to avoid a catastrophe. They might catch a falling glass before it shatters. Small interventions.
But why? If they aren't granting wishes, why do that?
To keep the school standing. Their job is to protect the integrity of the classroom. They aren't granting wishes for individual students. They're ensuring the infrastructure of the school works so that everyone has a full semester to study.
That makes perfect sense. If the school burns down, nobody graduates. So they'll step in to prevent the fire, but they absolutely will not take the final exam for you.
That's it. You have to fill in the Scantron yourself.
All right, let's talk about the big scary one, the part everyone thinks about, the exit strategy. Let's talk about death.
Or, as the C4 doctrine would reframe it, hardware failure.
Laughs. Yeah, reframing death as equipment malfunction really does take some of the sting out of it. It makes it sound like a broken toaster you just need to replace.
It does. It removes the horror and replaces it with pure mechanics. The text gives us two very distinct scenarios to explain how this works. The first is early death, an unexpected sudden end. Let's say a car crash.
Okay, so the body is destroyed instantly and violently.
The body breaks, the interface is shattered, but remember, the signal is a broadcast from the cloud. You cannot destroy a radio wave by smashing the radio.
The song is still in the air, even if the radio is in pieces.
Right. So in that car crash scenario, the signal ejects instantly. The text is clear. It is unharmed. It returns to its source, to the cloud. It says it often hovers above the wreck, observing before it fully withdraws. It's an emergency ejection seat.
So that's the immediate aftermath. But then comes what the text calls the grading system. This is what determines where you go next, because not everyone graduates, right?
No, not at all. This is the crucial difference between what it calls graduation and the re-Q.
The re-Q. That just sounds like being stuck at the DMV.
Laughs. It's probably worse. Let's look at the positive outcome first. Scenario A, graduation. You've lived a full life, you've been in the gym, you've lifted the heavy weights, you've made the hard choices. You have successfully densified your signal.
The text describes the resulting consciousness as a bright, coherent blue sphere of light. Very stable.
Yes. When the body finally fails from old age or illness, this coherent signal releases effortlessly. It doesn't disperse or panic. It holds its shape perfectly. It then uploads to the archive. It joins the road crew. You are done with the mud.
You pass the final exam.
You pass.
Yeah.
Now, scenario B, the re-Q, this is for when the lesson wasn't learned. This is the repeat.
This is if you spent your life just creating noise.
Correct. If your V.I.V.I. score, which seems to be some kind of metric for vitality, integrity, and vibratory index, is low, if you lived a life dominated by fear, reaction, and entropy, if you were just a vessel for the noise.
What did that kind of signal look like at the point of death?
It's described as a dim, flickering, reddish light that's full of static. It has holes in it. It's unstable.
And what happens to that weak, staticky signal?
It cannot leave the gravity well of the Earth. It simply isn't strong enough. It doesn't have enough escape velocity to ascend. It's too heavy with unresolved noise. So the planet's own gravitational and energetic field pulls it back down.
Into a new fetus.
Yeah.
A new uniform.
Into a new terminal to try again. The text is very, very blunt about this. Reincarnation is not a mystical journey of wonder where you get to explore being a princess in one life and an astronaut in the next.
Oh.
It's repeating a grade because you failed the final exam.
That is incredibly humbling. It completely strips away the romance of it. It's not, oh, I wonder what I'll come back as. It's, oh no, I have to do algebra again because I didn't pass.
Exactly. You are sent back to the classroom with a new uniform and a clean slate until you get the fundamental physics right. And the universe has all the time in the world. It will keep sending you back until you stabilize your signal.
So this brings us to the ultimate question, really the only question that matters if any of this is even remotely true, is how do we graduate? I don't want to repeat the grade. I want to be a coherent blue sphere of light. What is on the syllabus?
Section 5. Practical application. This is the how-to guide. And the answer is, surprisingly simple and surprisingly difficult. You don't need a spaceship. You don't need a neural chip. You need coherence.
The text lists some very specific actionable things. And they aren't what you'd expect to find in a document that's talking about cyborgs and dimensional physics. They sound like things my grandmother would tell me to do.
They are very human things. The first one listed is forgiving an enemy.
Okay, why forgiveness?
Yeah.
From a physics perspective, is it just about being a nice person?
No, morality is a function of physics in this system. Think about what holding a grudge or hating someone is. On a biological level, it's tension. It's a state of high friction. It floods your body with stress hormones. It creates heat and static in your nervous system.
And the pure entropy, it's chaos?
Yes. Holding a grudge is a high entropy state. It's chaotic, dissonant energy. Forgiveness, the act of releasing that, is a release of tension. It smooths the wave. It's an act of creating coherence where there was noise. It turns the static back into a clear signal.
Okay, another one. Deep breathing.
Simple.
Right.
But it's about regulating the biological uniform, calming the static of the nervous system. If your body is stuck in a fight-or-flight panic mode, you can't receive the broadcast of your higher consciousness clearly. You have to consciously tune the antenna.
Creating art. That's on the list.
What is art? It is the act of organizing chaos into order. That is literally what you were doing. You take random splotches of paint or random words or random musical notes, and you consciously structure them into a coherent form that contains meaning.
That's a class 3 activity. You're practicing being a creator, an architect.
You're training for the job.
Yeah.
And the last big one, helping a stranger with no expectation of reward.
And the physics of that is?
Recognizing the interconnectedness of the network. Realizing that all the signals are part of the same broadcast. An act of selfless service is a practical demonstration that you understand you are not an isolated uniform, but part of a larger, coherent whole.
So these actions, they aren't just nice things to do to get a good grade from a celestial teacher. They are mechanical adjustments.
That is the absolute key takeaway. In this doctrine, morality is physics. You aren't being good to please some bearded judge in the sky. You are literally optimizing your biology to better receive the broadcast of your own soul. You are cleaning your lens. You are tuning your antenna.
You're raising your own frequency.
Exactly. And the final protocol listed in the text, it just sums up the entire relationship perfectly.
You do not kneel to the architects. You study to join them.
The goal is to become a peer, not a servant. They don't want worshipers. They don't want slaves. They want colleagues. They want more hands on deck to help maintain the system.
That is such a profoundly empowering worldview. It puts all the responsibility, all the power squarely on our shoulders. There's no one coming on a white horse to save us.
Right.
There's just the curriculum, and we have to do the homework.
The homework is your life, the difficult conversation you need to have, the project you're procrastinating on, the person you need to forgive, the reaction you need to control. That is the work. That is the gym.
So to try and summarize this entire massive deep dive.
The universe is a school operating on the principles of a centrifuge. We are signals, consciousness, being broadcast into temporary biological uniforms.
And the entire purpose of this high-friction, high-pressure life is to separate our own signal from the noise, to stabilize our internal frequency through acts of love, discipline, and creation.
So that we can graduate, become coherent beings of light, and join the road crew.
And most importantly, avoid becoming a cyborg stuck in eternal traffic.
Right. Whatever you do, don't be the cyborg in traffic. That's the bumper sticker for this whole deep dive.
It's a lot to take in. It really, really reframes everything from top to bottom.
Yeah. It does. But it gives you a practical lens to look at your day differently.
Yeah.
When you get cut off in traffic, when you spill your coffee on your shirt, when your boss yells at you for no reason, it's not just random bad luck anymore.
It's a pop quiz.
It's a pop quiz. The universe is asking you, in that moment, can you maintain coherence right now? Or are you going to fall back into the noise? Every moment is that question.
Before we go, we always like to leave the listener with a final thought to chew on. And the text has this practice, this visualization called the mirror check.
Yes, this is a practical exercise I want everyone to try this week. The next time you're in the bathroom washing your hands, you're going to look in the mirror. And for a moment, try to see past the face. We get so obsessed with the wrinkles, the hair, the blemishes,
Uniform.
the uniform. Try just for a second to imagine that the reflection you're looking at is not a face, but a complex geometric light body that is waiting to be released. A beautiful glowing structure that is currently squeezed into a monkey suit.
See the signal, not just the screen it's playing on.
Exactly. And just remind yourself, the school is open, classes in session, graduation is the only way out.
I am definitely going to be thinking about that all week. Work on your signal density, everyone. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Class dismissed.